So, welcome to the podcast, Dr. Alison J Kay.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here, Jen.
So, I am so excited that we got connected, and I have been like binging your stuff on YouTube and in different places. I have to know what led you to Asia.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, great that you've been binging on my stuff and getting yourself lightened from it. May I ask before I answer that, what have you noticed?
So, there was one thing, it was something like breaking the standards of making money has been one of them, opening up to abundance, like coming in and aligning with soul and your soul purpose, and not just, I feel like you have this beautiful thing of like, we don't have to push and push and push until we break. Like, there's a way to have this alignment of flow of like abundance in just being who we are.
Yeah. So, but it's not just words with me. That's the thing that's different, right? So, I have a lot of people calling to my awareness lately. Really clearly, the universe wants me to hear it. That Dr. Allison, while I may have been opened up by something else out there, like LOA, and God bless LOA and all that it's shifted for people and their awareness, you have shown me the how. So, like, I know that there's so many people kind of saying what they are doing is kind of like along the lines of what I do, but I'm not just saying it. They're not just words for me. I actualize people feeling that and being in that. So, being in that meaning, my signature program, Jen, is called Magic Manifestation and Money Flow. And why I call it that is because from what I've seen from doing the clearings on the back of the house consciousness, so that it frees up more consciousness, and so we're more mindful and able to make new choices and create new neurological pathways and new behaviors, including with money. Um, you're in the flow when your chakras are cleared and you're aligned, and so in that flow you can manifest as if by magic, and that of course includes money. And it's really funny, so you asked me what led me to Asia. I had my hands over the abdomen of a client, and she was like on her third session of a package of 10. She's getting great results. I was really thrilled, both of us were thrilled, but I found myself asking, as my hands over her solar plexus and her sacral, how can I get more robust results for even more robust results for my clients? And at the same time, Jen, speaking of money, I was using my bachelor's. I had a master's, but I was using my bachelor's in English literature to teach in the classroom. And then alongside of that, I was running energy medicine and holistic health and wellness sessions for an additional revenue stream while also teaching meditation. And I only wanted basic housing, basic car. I did want organic food and a massage a week. I consider both of those preventative health 101. But I wasn't looking for luxury living, and I couldn't make ends meet with grace and ease. Plus, I saw myself I had already lived overseas a couple of different times and traveled and was very adventurous and am. And so I saw like a cage kind of being put around me, like, oh my God, am I going to be doing this for decades of my life? No, not acceptable. So these two things coalesced together. And I was led to, within a month's time, from a colleague, bringing in the fact that there's an international school system. So I did what I had to do, got resumes in, and traveled over to the place in the States where all the heads of the international schools come in from all over the world, got interviewed by a bunch of them in this hotel, which was really funny. Like, there's cheers outside each hotel room. And like in the morning, I could have been in Colombia, and in the afternoon, I could have been in Lebanon. And then later on in the day, I was in Moscow, and another part of the day, I was in Taiwan. I mean, it was just crazy. And so at the end, I accepted the job at the international school in Taiwan, the small democratic Chinese nation south of mainland China, because I viewed that whether India or Taiwan, both of those cultures have ancient wisdom that goes back 5,000 years about how energy, the subtle energy system and consciousness works. But Jen, the key is that they still operate from it today. It's not like in the West where we had alchemists that went underground into the mystery schools, so that's why I went there. And I came back after a decade there, and here I am.
Oh, I love that. So, what was your biggest takeaway from that 10 years there?
How much, so this became one of the two parts of my mission, how much pushing, forcing, making things happen we do in the West that's unnecessary because we live from our minds, in our ego minds and our intellects. And if we knew and understood the subtle energy system in our consciousness and did the inner work, so much becomes easier. So for example, with money, yes, if you have if your heart chakra is open and it's turning the vital life force energy, there's a vortex in front of it. And some of the frequencies contained in it are magnetism, are receiving and receptivity. So if you're closed down, if you're like thinking with the unconscious belief or even conscious belief, I have to work hard, I have to make my goals, and you go about it in that strategic way we're taught in the West with, you make a list of the goals, you figure out the how, and then you go for it. Whereas in this world of understanding my consciousness and subtle energy system can contribute to my life because that's why I have it. And it is the fundamental functioning of my system behind my thoughts that I hear consciously. Then you have your heart chakra pulling to you possibilities that can come flying in. So what I experience is I have a thought, for example, that like when my latest book got published, I would like more PR. So I had that thought. I didn't have to do any research, no Googling, nothing, no phone calls, no questions to colleagues, just an opportunity that was perfect for me came flying in. And that's who is sending out, asking and pitching to have me on more podcasts. I didn't do any research and it was a perfect fit. And I like giving money to people in the Philippines. One of my long-term one-on-one clients is from there. She's an ex-senator from there. So when they talk in law of attraction about the things like just focus on what you desire, I find a lot of people can't do that. Instead they end up focusing on why it won't work, why it won't, and then they'll end up saying this is too good to be true. But I actually help people actualize the how into having it. So it's fun. It's fun taking people out of struggle. I mean, I frequently say, one of my business coaches loves this. She loves that I say on my free monthly vibration upgrade call, if you're addicted to the struggle paradigm, I'm not the right mentor for you. And I just posted even today is where we have a new moon on Thursday with a partial solar eclipse. And we just had this full moon with a full lunar eclipse. That's eclipse season. And eclipse means to end. And the ancients knew to pay attention. They were actually in awe and fear of eclipses because of the power of what it has to eclipse things in our lives. And so right now, as we're speaking, I feel like even more coming out of 2012 to 2032. So this is another thing. I came back and Voice America asked me to do a show on the Mayan galactic alignment for December 21st, 2012. I was doing nothing in my business other than taking private clients on VIP trips to the Mayan ruins. I wasn't advertising that. So nonetheless, I said, give me 48 hours, let me listen in and see if I want to do this. And I did. And I had 2.5 years of weekly radio shows interviewing specialists and experts, not only from my first book about measuring subtle energy and the effects of meditation, but also about the Mayan galactic alignment on December 21st, 2012. And they're not the only ones that thought and saw that that date was the end of an old era and the beginning of a new one, but it's a 20-year window till 2032. And I feel like where we've gotten to by now has been all the clearing out of the old, the crumbling of stuff that's out of alignment, that where there's abuses of power, where there's secrets that are keeping people down. And we've been through that, and COVID's a part of that. And as we are turning a corner in this eclipse season, it feels like the building time of the new paradigm is just now starting. So it really behooves people to get themselves aligned and cleared out of the old so that they can see and vibrate at the same kind of frequency that will allow for these new possibilities to become a part of their life. So you're living in the flow of what's real for now, not the past and your beliefs around like why you can't have that.
Oh,
Or be that or do that.
I love that. And I love, like, I'm just recently kind of moving in more to like who I am spiritually and connecting to self and all of the other things. I want to know, like, when you're a little bit like misaligned, what are those things that are bubbling up to the surface? You mentioned some of them, but I want it to be like really clear for the audience of like, what does it look like to be out of alignment?
Okay, that's a great question. And another, like my second book is called Vibrational Upgrade, A Conspiracy for Your Bliss. My publisher, knowing my mission and the work I'm up to, he said, you have to have this as a subtitle, Easing Humanity's Evolutionary Transition.
Ooh.
So, excuse me, the nickname for this 20-year window is Humanity's Spiritual Awakening Times. And I'm saying that because of what you just said. So we've been seeing more yoga classes offered and more people interested in sound healing and crystal bowls and crystals themselves. And now there's more meditation apps. Even before COVID, I have some of my work on a meditation app, right? So there is that spiritual awakening that's happening. When you're not, you just know when you're in alignment, you know when you're in the flow. And so it does take a chunk of work of clearing out. And when I say work, with me, it's play. It really, it truly is. Like this is this is one of the redirects that I use.
Yes, you are my new favorite person.
Yeah, because they make it so serious, especially like, and one of the keys I use and have used for people I can trust as a teacher and mentor is what kind of sense of humor they have, meaning if they have one and they use it. And even truly, when I'm training students in Vibrational Upgrade System that I created, they're trained to understand that a lot of the times when you're hearing intuitive guidance and you're working with, let's call them your team of guides, there's a trickster element. I don't mean like in Native American symbolism with the coyote animal where you're kind of in self-sabotage. It's like you're chasing your own tail. That's what the coyote animal medicine means. But a trickster element like goofy, playful, like a jokester. The divine has a sense of humor, like putting behind a veil for all of us until we get to it, like a certain amount of work in the beginning is done or play. And you can't see how you've been living behind that veil until you've cleared enough. That in and of itself has a sense of humor to it, you know, like it's just like if it's just a trick, almost as if you're sitting there thinking, I can't believe what she's saying. It can't be that good. It can't be that easy. I see everybody else struggling around me, or there's this struggle, or I haven't been able to make this happen. That's when you know you're not clear enough. That's when you know you're blocked. And another simple way that I tell people is if you say to your loved ones, you want A, and you see your behaviors and your choices and your time spent not A, but going for anything that's not A, like you're going for B, or you're making choices that aren't leading to A, you have blockages at an unconscious or subconscious level. You're not allowing yourself to go for what you're really actually desiring and saying you want.
Ooh. All right, I'm hearing a lot of me in what you're saying, right?
Good. Good.
So I know that you have so many things. You just mentioned you have a new book that's coming out. Like, what is this new book?
Oh. All right, hold on, let me grab it. This is it right here. It's on Amazon, The Dragon Master Creatrix, Conversations with a Female Spiritual Teacher for These New Times. And this is a really different book. It's my fourth. It's a lightning bolt there because that's one of my nicknames because I'm able to catalyze so much energy or light. And it's in story form, a woman going to learn about the ancient power mysteries and access more power and get trained in energy medicine. I lead my retreats that contain the most official part, let's say, of my training, where they get manuals and they get these sacred attunements. And that's in the UK. And so people travel, my students from around the world, to meet me there. And that book is in the first half of each chapter, it's a story of her being taken to sacred sites or stone circles or being trained in energy medicine or receiving attunements. And then the second half is literally very advanced questions that my students, my masterminders, not my magic manifestation and money flow people in the 3-month program, that's the prerequisite for the mastermind. And I invite people out of there into the mastermind. About a third at most of the people are ripe to be trained in Vibrational Upgrade System. So they've asked me all these kinds of questions, including like, how do I stop caring about what other people think of me? It's not only about like, how do I follow my intuitive guidance instead of, chickening out and not kinds of questions only. It's not only about the spiritual path. It's very real. Because I've had to, in order to be who I am, I've had to I learned in my early 20s, 2 times at most, I got to listen to that intuition because chaos ensues ensued when I did it. And so I have let it lead the way as if I'm Hansel or Gretel with breadcrumbs. And that's in part, how I found out about the international school system. And I've asked questions. I'm not just expecting these possibilities to be dumped into my life. I've done the work to open up my consciousness to be able to hear the questions. And I have cojones of steel, I follow my guidance. So there's questions in there that are more about how can I be more like that and live a life that is, it's not just the spiritual kinds of questions, but it's a really fun book because the first 3 are all nonfiction. And this one has a sense of story to it. And she goes on the retreat asking, should I stay with my husband? And by the end, she has an answer. So it kind of has an interesting little bit of mystery and suspense too.
How amazing. And I'll make sure to get links in the show notes everywhere to that book. First, it has dragons in it, and I'm a little partial to dragons. As a dragonette, a small
That's
dragon
why I loved
myself.
your last name. So this is my third book.
Oh, okay. I know what my next two reads are.
Yeah, and this one's on Audible, and people, I recorded this in, so where I have my students come and meet me is Glastonbury, England, and that's considered the heart chakra of the planet. So not only us, but the planet has chakras and has meridians, like we have that the energy flows on. So this is a really powerful spot, Glastonbury, UK. And so I had somebody in the States coordinate for me to be at a recording studio. So I had just finished leading a bunch of retreats. I was really high from all that I have to deliver on them, these attunements. Each one is worth 8 one-on-one sessions, and I receive as I give.
Oh.
So I recorded it right after the retreats in Glastonbury, England, and people just rave about it on Audible. It's the only one that's not on Audible. But yeah, my second of my four, the third and fourth book, my last two have dragon in the title.
Yay!
Oh, wait,
I know what's going on my bookshelf.
Hold on, let me read you the subtitle of Reasonable Dragons. You're going to love this. How to activate the field of possibilities where logical magic is the new normal. Because this stuff is logical.
Sold.
You know what I mean? Like it's like a higher order of logic. Like you'll see after you've worked with your intuition long enough, after you've woken up and you're following your intuition more regularly, and you have less clogged old stuff that you're operating from and making choices from, and you're starting to like rise above the old, and you're really starting to see the new begin, and you're continuing to make choices that lead you down the path, creating a new life. You see yourself doing this.
Yeah.
And so once you hit a certain point, you understand that, like, so much of the time, another podcast interviewer actually said to me, you should make a t-shirt out of that, Alison, because I said so much of the time our ego mind, the conscious thoughts we hear, it interprets things the exact opposite of what's actually meant from the universe or the soul level. So it can see, for example, all of the crumbling of the old in like 2016, 17, 18, 19, all the protests in the streets, COVID itself. Yes, absolutely. There's been grief and loss and suffering and just stress on all of humanity, for sure. Aside from that, taking the bigger picture, this mountaintop perspective or the satellite perspective, it's still part of the cleansing process so that we can move into a time that is much more purified, where people are acting out of integrity and not out of selfish motives only. And that sounds ideal, but if you look at the Me Too movement, if you look at the Black Lives Matter movement, if you look at how intense American politics has become, if you look at countries that typically don't have people protesting in the streets to have their voices heard, has been happening. All of this is not chaos only. If you stop there, that's the mind's interpretation. But if you rise above it and see it more from the universe's perspective or our higher self's perspective, it's part of all of the stuff that's out of alignment, crumbling, so that we have a much more just society. It's called the new golden era, what we're moving into.
Oh. Wow, this really is a magical time.
Yes. Especially right now, Jen, we have a new moon on Thursday. There's eclipse seasons are so potent to just get rid of the old and really start a new path. You get a lot more of a boost from making that choice when you do it during a time like this.
Oh, that is so magical. So where can people connect with you? Because I know that I've been stalking you in many different places to prepare for this interview. And in turn, I'm like, okay, I just need Alison and Dr. Alison in my space all the time. Where can people find you?
So it's funny. I came to I'll get to that in a sec. Thanks for asking, Jen. I came to a point where like people were, I felt like after doing this work, I dropped my classroom teaching and administrator profession and took this work full time when I came back from Asia. And after a couple of years, I had enough recordings out there and enough people were using them regularly that I started to notice I didn't feel alone. I didn't feel like myself only in my field. So I started to perceive how many people were actually, not exactly the amount, but I started to understand people were like listening to me. And so I look at the hand motion I'm doing. It's kind of like a thing of drawing off of me. So I had to like up my game so that doesn't happen while the recordings still work. So people go to sleep. They tell me this all the time, especially my masterminders. And honestly, people who get the most change from me, they come in and work with me because you get the classroom teacher investment style in each individual, but you get the direct interaction where I can read for you what's happening and I can clear your specific blocks and activate for you the new that your system intuitively is showing me it wants. And so I love to get direct access to people. And the way to do that is magic manifestation and money flow. It's a 4-figure investment because of the ridiculous shifts you get in my time and expertise. Frankly, I'd never said that out loud. That feels funny saying it, but I tend to
That
run
sounds
really,
like ego.
well, I tend to run really humble. That's,
Yeah.
I mean, so I'll go a little bit, it's the Chinese culture in me, as well as my background as an English person. I tend to just have, what I do works. And so my nose has been to the grindstone, just doing it and helping people. And so to talk about me doing it, it's still it's just interesting. So magic manifestation and money flow, if you go to my website, which is vibrationalupgrade.com, and you look at the work with me tab, drop down, you'll see programs and you'll see one-on-ones. I don't do very many one-on-ones anymore, except for my masterminders really, and a few long-term one-on-one clients. But the magic manifestation and money flow program, you can get to under the programs tab. If you want to start that, and you don't want to throw yourself in, you can go to Activate Your Magic, which is a lower price program per month. And you get each new moon and full moon, you get sacred activations to keep you further in alignment and use those energetics that are getting cast down on us that we're living under. You get more aligned with them to make use of them. And then there's 2 live events in a month in Activate Your Magic. So I would recommend starting there for people who are newer. Jen, if you're ready to dive in, come into magic manifestation and money flow, because what I realize is I save people time. Like in the 5th year of meditation, and I started meditating in 92 rather. I realized that's when I picked up my first energy medicine modality. So nowadays I'll see my students going in like their 2nd year of working with me, and they've gotten results that I'll say to them, wow, man, that took me like 5 or 7 years to get to. So I literally have gotten the answer of how do I get more robust results for my clients and speed them up? So, I mean, you can spend time and a little bit of money piecing stuff together, but where you really will speed it up, honestly, is if you work with me. You invest your time and energy in me, I invest it back. Thank you for saying yeah, because it does make sense, doesn't it?
It does. And I think as people, well, at least I'm speaking from my heart at this point, is that as someone with more of a spiritual connection modality that I want to share with the world, which I've been hiding from the world until this year. So no more hiding. But I find it like hard to say like, yeah, it is a 4-figure investment to work with me, but you won't have to go through that last 10 years that I've been through. Promise you that. And
yeah,
that's
I mean,
so important.
It is really important. Thanks for saying that, Jen. I mean, I don't have a problem saying it's a 4-figure investment. I have a 6-figure business and I help others do the same. I mean, when I got back from Asia, I was expected to talk about spiritual awakening and holistic health and wellness. And everybody was so freaked out about the economy. Now I had been tucked away in Asia where I had increased my net income by 60%. So I was all in abundance and came back and was launching my first business because I'd always worked either in nonprofits or as a classroom teacher. And put in front of me were people who couldn't hear anything about the spiritual path or holistic health or wellness for the most part. Instead, they were worried about money. So of course, I'm going to serve people where they're at in front of me. So I became unexpectedly, ridiculously proficient at clearing money blocks. Even that you opened the show with saying something along the lines of, we're so used to having to make it happen. So what about this? If you look at your beliefs about money, are you chasing after prosperity, or are you allowing and asking and inviting prosperity to chase after you? So, yeah, I see the blank stare.
I'm
you
like, I'm chasing. I'll be honest. I'll be authentic. I'm chasing.
But it's the whole inversion. It's like understanding that, like in the West, we're so attuned, especially in America, to the external. Right. And so the external measurements, like what do you do for a job? Where did you go to school? And then therefore I have this kind of car, this kind of house with this square footage. My kids are going to these colleges, all of that external measurement, where in the clothing and the bags, instead of where your real power to change what shows up on the external is in here. And I don't mean just simply meditating. I mean like converting under your understanding. So in traditional Chinese medicine, for example, one of the most fundamental tenets is where qi goes, or energy, blood follows. And I add on where consciousness goes, energy follows
Oh.
and blood follows. Blood is the physical. Quantum physics says the same thing. It's waves, and then our repeated thought patterns or a very strong, intense thought, like a trauma, collapses a wave into a particle. And that means it's physicalizing. So whether you're looking at ancient wisdom, like the one I just talked about from traditional Chinese medicine or Taoist philosophy, or you're looking at quantum physics, they both say the same thing. The physical shows up in response to what energy is doing. Energy is our first language, not Spanish, Chinese, English. Energy. You go into a room and you assess, does it feel good here? I get on this show, you assess, does she feel good? Do you feel good? You know, we may look at how each other looks, you know, but it's all about feeling first and foremost. Am I safe here? Is this an upbeat environment? Do you have negative energy? You know, and you're not even consciously necessarily hearing the assessments you're making energetically. So we move energy. Where our consciousness goes, energy follows. We
Oh.
move energy by where our focus is. And especially the higher vibration that we are, we move even more energy. So it's another trick by the divine sense of humor, where the physical seems so important, and yet it's the physical that lags behind at the tail end. And in fact, if we were to go and work within, how much it's like an inversion. It really is of living where you understand and recognize your own power to create. And it's not like everything that shows up in your field. This is another mistake a lot of people make that I love to clear up. When working with the law of attraction, a lot of people think that if something bad shows up in their lives, it's because they miscreated or they were thinking bad, or what did I do to cause this bad thing to show up? What am I believing? And I find, and I'm the only one saying this out there in the field, I find like I'm, after living in Asia for 10 years and paying tens of thousands of dollars myself to get trained in how to clear karma, because karma is pretty darn persnickety, man. Um, there is at least about 10% of stuff that happens randomly. Like that car accident that you may have driven by or you may be involved in, it's not necessarily just because you were angry. You know, I mean,
Yeah.
it could just be somebody else's behavior that you were there at the wrong time for. I mean, there is some random stuff. Karma seems to kick in gear and people have to wrestle with it and deal with clearing it at some certain point in their lives. And a lot of the times it's in the 30s. So it's, you could say I was thinking a certain way, so this showed up in my life, but there's much more going on. And so I don't want people taking responsibility for that which isn't theirs and then making themselves feel bad or wrong or giving up and working with the internal world or their consciousness because they don't seem to be getting the results. It really takes a bit of time to work with your consciousness as you awaken and you learn. It really takes a bit of time to understand this stuff. And if you give up in the first 6 months or a year, it's almost like you're worse off than if you just kept going along the path. You're meant to continue to evolve. I mean, what the hell? If we're eternal, right? I'm really going off with this interview with you, Jen.
I love it.
Thank you. But if we're eternal, like nice in the Committee of Nicaea, they wiped out in the 400 something. It was 416 AD in Rome. They met, and it's called the Committee of Nicaea, and they wiped off reincarnation out of the Bible. It had been in the Bible. If you live over in the East, over half the rest of the world understands in reincarnation. I know that there's hypnotherapists, an MD, for example, he couldn't get a patient to heal. He put the patient into hypnosis. That patient talked in an Irish accent unexpectedly all of a sudden, said that this is the pub that my family and I owned in this lifetime that she was regressed to. And he had his staff go look up the data she gave him, and that family did indeed exist. That pub did indeed exist. And then there were other times when looking at the picture of someone, this is not the same source, the shapes of our face, the size of our eyes, the shapes of our noses tend, when there has been proof of a person regressing, coming up with this information from a past life, and they've compared faces of each lifetime, they say this, they're much the same. When you have a child who comes in with a high ability, interest, or talent, like violin, genius at age 4, that's a past life carryover. This is one of the bigger takeaways from Asia too, is the separation that if we do believe in reincarnation, we make between lives. It's much more a constant thread in Asia. Like it's just much more of just a continuum. So yeah, if we're eternal, if we have past lives, and this is only temporary, this physical body thanking it, why would we focus on what's temporary? I mean, if you look at the big picture, really, what I understand from yoga, I'm a yoga teacher trained in India, and they helped answer this for me. It's called the samskara. Each of us have about 2 in our lives. There's soul patterns, behavioral patterns that we're born to move beyond, to evolve beyond. And it's not like you're getting punished with karma. Karma is pretty simple logic, cause and effect.
Yeah.
But then when it becomes more persnickety, it's those 2 or 3 things. I say 2 or 3. I know I just said 2. Sometimes it's 3. Key core patterns to our personality that we're here to evolve beyond. And so when we're in the process of evolving beyond it, it can seem like this will never change. This will never shift. And that's trickery from the ego mind in a way. There's different stages on the path that really, if you have a good mentor, you can move through it much more gracefully. It can get really convoluted and a lot of unnecessary struggle and waste a lot of years. But if we're here as souls in a body, here's another way to invert it. This inside of me is more important than this outside of me. Not to say don't take care of the body at all. Then it's another level of veil where we live with an external focus instead of an internal focus.
Oh, I'm like, so much to process. I'm like, and I love this, like all of this. I'm like, my brain has gone in so many different directions right now, and I'm like, okay, things are starting to make sense. Like,
Yay.
I was born with a fear of helicopters, and I did do one of those, like those hypnosis, worked with somebody that took me back, and I was shot down in a helicopter in a past life. And I oftentimes forget that I'm still working through that soul that's hanging out in this physical body. And I want to thank you for that reminder.
Hold on, Jen. I want to give you another one that I think will ease you up. That's not the only lifetime you've had.
Oh, I know.
Yeah. So that's only like 1/16 at most of your soul, that helicopter trauma. So we want to clear that, not just this is what I do with my students. I train them, like I can easily give you a past life reading. Like I already knew that, right? When you said it instantly, it was a past life, bam, is what I saw, almost hearing the noise. I don't voluntarily give these readings to people. I mean, you have to be held in a safe space so I can follow along with you afterwards and clear it. We don't want to just give you the information, because I could do that, but I don't. A lot of the times I'll actually withhold the information, saying just what's necessary, and then run the clearing on it, on the trauma, so you can evolve beyond it. So then you could see yourself being able to go in a helicopter. I mean, that's what we're talking about, where everything becomes, there's like almost, I feel like getting to a 0 point, like a clean slate, and it's available in this lifetime. These are magical times we're living in. Don't let the chaos fool you. In Chinese, the character for chaos has 2 different characters together, crisis, but also opportunity. So inherent in crisis, ancient wisdom tells us, is opportunity. That's in fact what crisis is used for. And what would it take for us to live lives that didn't require crisis in order to force us to grow?
Wow. I'm like, my brain is like, all right, this is amazing. I cannot wait to continue to be in your space, because this really, like, it's very eye-opening for me, very eye-opening. And I know it will be for many others within the tribe. And I know that you also have things that you need to run off to. So I'm going to ask you my favorite final question, just because I'm going to honor your time, is if somebody walked away with just one little, like, mic drop, I'm out moment, what would it be?
I'm going to do this differently as a teacher. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. I'm going to turn it on you to help you process, because I was going quickly because the time's limited. And when I talk, it's charged with energy. So it's not just receiving concepts, it's to kind of seed them for you to have an easier time to process them. So let's get that integrating. What's the biggest thing that stuck out for you?
Is that it's time to just step into being myself and to let it flow, and to stop going against everything that I am, and just allow this magical time to awaken my magic inside.
Beautiful. Yeah, the nature of the mind, of the ego mind, the Buddhism says that all human minds are neurotic. Here are the tools with which to work with your own particular flavor of neuroses, meaning meditation and mindfulness. So there's so much life to be lived beyond that negativity. in that negative focus, the ego mind will criticize us and focus only on what we're not doing right. And I see that you come from that kind of
Oh, very much so.
critical head. Yeah. I'd love to help you
100%.
replace that. Yeah. I mean, that's what I mean. When people are listening to me all the time, it's funny because they're like, Alison, your voice is Dr. Alison, your voice has finally replaced mine. And I become like your number one cheerleader. It's really one of the key ways people tend to use my work and how I serve. So welcome aboard, Jen.
I will be in your space. Don't you worry.
Yeah, I'm excited. And just to have a beautiful, blessed day, all of you. Thank you for this time, Jen.
Thank you.